there's a difference between love and something like infatuation. A lot of modern art is based on something closer to infatuation. Because what it does is it in some ways surprises and shocks you and kind of draws you in really fast. It's like fashion. Fashion is kind of like that, right? So
like that guy was saying last night, it's like the opposite. It was like the Satanic Transcendentals. I don't know if I agree with him, but it was a cool point. Mm-hmm. You know, what was the theory? Sorry.
Oh yeah. So that was very interesting. He said that the Socratic Transcendentals are truth, goodness, and beauty. And
you need some more whiskey.
just don't put your hand in front of your.
Yeah, so truth, goodness, and beauty. And then he said the inversions of those, the Satanic Transcendentals, he named them.
One was fashion.
Yeah, that was the opposite of beauty.
Sentimentality.
That's right. Sentimentality, cruelty, and fashion.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Sentimentality, cruelty, and fashion.
And they don't converge because
they're
it's the opposite way. They disperse.
So that's the interesting thing, is that the godly transcendentals all draw towards one another in unity, and whereas sentimentality, cruelty, and fashion flee from one another. Mm-hmm. They explode apart. They hate one another. And it's very interesting image.
And the let's say the shock of novelty, is something. It's real, but it is not the same as love, right? So you love your wife, and then you're walking down the street, and then there's like a beautiful woman that just appears in front of you. It will have an effect on you, but that effect that's not love, right? It's like it's a kind of attraction. It's a kind of momentary. It's closer to the passions, like it's closer to the kind of attraction that you would feel in a passionate way.
It arouses eros, but eros can be like lust eros to possess and control the woman, or it can be a divine eros, a love of God, because she's created in the image of God, and you can see her as an icon of divine beauty. The difference is in your heart. It depends on your spiritual state.
But the point about modernism is that because it shocks and it uses things that in some ways you don't expect, or that you wouldn't expect to be asked to look at, that it creates that sense. So it can be like a quick surprise, like, oh wow, this is but in
a lot of TV shows like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so, but it's not. It's so when when something new appears, it's very attractive. Because you haven't seen it before. And that's what fashion does. And so think about fashion in architecture is, to me, one of the funniest things, is that you have this building that's completely new, and you haven't never seen anything like it before. And so everybody's like, wow, this is wild. Like, this is a really impressive thing, and it's kind of surprising and shocking, and so it draws attention, it looks like love. But then 20 years down the line, it's like your grandparents' shag carpeting. It looks dated, right? It loses its veneer very fast. It becomes, and so you realize that it wasn't love. It was something like maybe a spark. It was like it's like a kind of infatuation, but it was not the deep love.
So is infatuation about novelty?
I think so. Infatuation has to do with novelty.
Okay.
Yeah,
because it's
I could see that.
Yeah.
Because it's like the initial opening up of possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when somebody says like, oh, I love fashion, kind of what they're saying is I love whatever is new this year.
Yeah.
Which is a little different from saying I love objective beauty. I love objectively beautiful clothes. It's a little different from that.
But like Rococo was fashion. Baroque was fashion.
Yeah, I don't...
Like I still love Baroque.
It would be... Yeah, all these great art movements were fashionable at the time, but they have a lasting beauty that outlasts their fashion. But if a historical style is subject to revivals, decades or centuries later, it tends to indicate that there's something objectively good about it. It transcends the fashion from which it was born. I don't want to belittle fashion entirely. I mean, the fashion industry or the fashion process in art serves a very important role of, putting new stuff in front of everybody.
Hey, hit that like button.
And that's
so it's a necessary mechanism.
It's an important role because, for every 10 somewhat ridiculous or stupid things the fashion industry puts in front of us, there's going to be one thing that actually sticks.
Yeah. But what I mean in terms of architecture, that's where you can actually argue I think pretty successfully to think that here this building. No. You could say you can
whiskey, man.
Yeah, you can argue that this building, although it seems all flashy. It looks all flashy and impressive right away because it has a kind of innovative. It looks new or it looks of the times. That's going in 10 years. That's going to look dated. It's going to look, and so that there is a classical, even if it's like between the classical and the Baroque and even the neo-Gothic, all of those things have enough in common that they can hold together. But if you put next to a building like that some insane, Gary design thing that looks like it's falling over, that is very impressive. But it's, in 50 years, no one's going to care about those buildings.
All that stuff is just fashion.
I mean,
I almost see the fashion industry as a little bit like the fool in the royal court. The fool is mostly saying nonsense, but there's a little bit of wisdom mixed in with that nonsense.
So what's the wisdom of a Frank Gehry building?
Well, I kind
remember death.
Maybe I
Memento
don't know.
mori.
Well, there's plenty of stuff from like falling water, I mean that's not Frank Gehry, but
No. I'm not a fan of Frank Gehry. I kind of think that's
but like Frank
that's,
Lloyd
that's
Wright.
the dated
There's plenty of
that'll
stuff
fall
that's
away.
modernist.
Yeah.
That I still like.
Yeah, Frank
Like,
Lloyd,
I don't
Frank
want
Lloyd
it to
Wright's
go away.
Frank Lloyd Wright's a good example. He was cutting edge avant-garde, but a lot of what he put out there is so undeniably beautiful that it's been affecting architecture for
What's
the
the
next
thing in
100
Arizona?
years. Taliesin?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Taliesin is like
Oh, I mean,
super impressive.
all of his buildings are magnificently beautiful.
Disagree.
Not all of them are equally subject to imitation.
Because one of the things that happened in the Orthodox tradition, this is probably the clearest example, is that sometimes something will appear as this new thing that is completely surprising and just kind of, for the context, somewhat shocks because it's kind of new. Like Rublev's Trinity icon is a good example. Like Rublev's Trinity icon that didn't exist before. So we had an image called the Hospitality of Abraham, but it was very different from what Rublev ended up doing, by hinting at Christ in the center and hinting at the fact directly that this was the Trinity, removing Abraham and Sarah, kind of centralizing everything, opening up the space. So that image was quite innovative, right? It wasn't, but as soon as it happened, people saw in it, in some ways, an innovation that was connected to the deepest part of the tradition. And then it immediately became something you should imitate, right? Immediately they said, if you're going to paint icons, paint like Rublev, and so it's not like that this is impossible, but that right now it seems as if everybody is hunting for that sense of novelty. Like we only have taste buds for the novelty. What is the new thing? What is the new thing? And that doesn't seem to be tenable. Seems like that's running out.
But there also seems something dangerous about let's just do the past.
Of course. But I don't, who that's a good artist, even in liturgical art, that is just doing the past?
I mean,
that's a good artist.
No offense to Orthodox iconographers, but I feel like there's a bunch of them.
But I said good. I didn't say. In the really good that you can recognize, in the good icon painters that are here in America or internationally, which one of them is only copying?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. The ones that are worth watching are the ones who are actually putting some modernistic influence into the iconography.
Now, what about the Dynacos?
Like Father Silouan.
Because the Dynacos are amazing, but I don't really see them doing anything innovative.
Oh yeah,
and maybe that's because I don't understand. I don't yet understand all their stuff. But to me, it's just like
Anton Dyneco is doing a fusion of classical Roman style painting with Byzantine iconography. He's essentially painting,
so those are the two styles.
He's essentially painting Byzantine compositions in Imperial Roman style, you might say. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that, but that's what I see when I look at it.
So maybe it's just my untrained eye that I like I can see Seraphim O'Keefe, and I'm like, he's doing something slightly different. Like that doesn't look like Rublev.
Any artist who loves many things, as an artist should, you'll see many things in his art. It's like it would be really hard for a great artist to love only one thing and only want that one thing to be the only influence in his art. It's like nobody who's a great artist would only love one thing.
So if you look at Father Zenon, in some ways, who probably is the most influential, maybe the most influential iconographer in the early 21st century, you can see that he is constantly experimenting. That everything he does clearly is embodied in the tradition. Like he has a deep understanding of the tradition, but he's moving between Russian style and then moving towards more Byzantine and then early Roman as well, and kind of playing and seeing like how can he put all this together. But when people look at it from the outside, okay, so maybe this is a good way of thinking about it, is that people who don't have the deep knowledge of this will look at it and will just recognize it as being theirs. They won't be. There's a way in which you can have innovation and change in images that is drawing attention to itself. So it's like, hey, look at this funny new thing I'm doing, and look at how cool and radical I am, and that distracts from what the object is doing. But you can integrate novelty and change and transformation in a way if it's serving the purpose of the image. So I think that's what Father Silouan does so well, is that if you know about push-pull theory of the 1950s, if you understand some of the things that he's doing, the way he frames the images, that you're like, okay, he's definitely pulling in postmodern and let's say expressionist ideas in there. But a little old lady that walks up to one of his icons will just see it as a beautiful icon that I can venerate. They won't feel like this odd, like, why is this so different? Why is this so strange? And I think that's the way in which innovation and continuity can be expressed together, right? It's like it has to do what it's supposed to do. If it doesn't, then what is it? It has to fit. Yeah.
Maybe this is slightly tangential, but what's the mannerist thing? Like if I look at George Cordis's icons, the super elongated figures, and Silouan does that too. I mean, like his Mary of Egypt and his what's the super orange Onophorus or something like that. It's like, dude, the guy super tall, and so like, what's the deal with the mannerism? Like, what's it going after? What's the purpose of it?
Well, mannerism typically emerges in the late stage of a stylistic movement. It's the style's decadence, and it's a way for the artists to show I can break my own rules and still make it work. So, for instance, there's an architectural period known as Mannerism that comes at the end of the Italian Renaissance in the 16th century, and it's like the Italian Renaissance architects spent 200 years trying to figure out the rules of classicism. They were looking at Roman ruins, and they were trying to canonize the rules that made those buildings look the way they did, and they figured out those rules, and they wrote them down in treatises, and then architects, followed the rules, and they made buildings that looked, pretty legitimately like ancient Roman buildings. Having done that, well, what's a brilliant architect supposed to do next? They start breaking the rules, and you see buildings that have like broken columns, but they were actually built broken. You see buildings that sort of look like they're starting to fall into ruin, where like certain stones are slipping out of place, but they were actually built that way. You see like something that's, if this is supposed to be on top of this, they switch it around and do it the other way, and it's like anybody who's a classically trained architect looks at that and says, that's a joke, I know what he's doing. He's just trying to show us that he can break a rule and get away with it. But he can get away with it because they're still beautiful buildings. If the building were ugly, it would just be deconstructionism.
Yeah, but I think so. I mean, the same thing happened in painting. At the end of the Renaissance, even Michelangelo's late paintings are mannerist in the sense that he's clearly...
Like David.
He's breaking the proportion. David is clearly an example of something that is not at all proportional. But I think that what you're I think you're confusing that with what Father Silouan and some of these painters are doing.
Because I've heard the elongation of the figures referred to as a mannerist.
Yeah,
But that seems different than like the mannerism of like Dutch painting where it's breaking the frame
Yeah.
and it's not like properly framed. So like maybe I just misunderstand the
Yeah.
term mannerist.
Well,
but
I think that's legitimate.
You think that
Yeah.
the elongation of the figures and icons is to break the rules?
It's not done. I don't think it's done in order to break the rules, but I think it's an instance of the obvious rules of naturalism being broken in order to bring the painting
But it's
out of the realm of mere imitation and into the realm of a sort of ingenious commentary on how things could be. I mean, of course, people always look at those icons and they say, like, this is in order to show, like, the spiritual quality of the figure, that they're sort of transcending the material reality. I mean, I think that's a nonsense. I can't imagine a medieval writer writing about art like that.
But then, like the line stuff that Seraphim does, where it's like in the Krug tradition,
Yeah.
right? Like, could you classify that, like with that definition, as that's also some type of mannerism?
But let me just finish with the elongation. I do think that, I mean, it's not necessarily conscious, but I do think that this idea of, let's say, elongating the figures or of stylistically pushing in a certain direction, that it can be done for a purpose, even if that purpose isn't completely understood.
Yeah.
And so when you describe the type of mannerism that you described in terms of architecture, it's more like a kind of commentary or a kind of joke or like you said, a type of, it's a type of little spice at the end to tell you that, okay, I know all these rules, but I can also play with them and joke with them. What developed in this style of iconography, those moments, because it's not always, but there are moments when the figures are generally elongated, that you have 9 heads, or and you see it in the books. Like if you look at the book by Dionysius that describes the proportions in icons, like he'll tell you, like it's nine heads or more. Like these are that is not a normal person. What is a normal person? About 7.5 heads. That's the normal person. So they knew that they were elongating their proportions, and they were doing it on purpose. And I do think that I think it does have something to do with verticality. It has something to do with our, looking at something that's moving up. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily dematerialization, like that it's that kind of language.
It kind of ennobles the figure.
Yeah.
The figure looks a little bit less like just you or me, the guy on the street, and he looks a little bit more like our sort of fairy tale image of a king or a prince. There's something extra.
Yeah, but I do think that's why I'm saying it's different from the type of mannerism that appeared at the end of the Renaissance, which was more like a kind of decadent time where we're breaking the rules to show that we're better than them and that we're kind of able to play with this in a way. I think that this was serving an aesthetic purpose. Like it was serving a purpose. And not just like breaking rules. I don't know, that's my sense. Like when you go to Shaft and you see those figures, like those figures in the front of the cathedral, man, these like super elongated, like beautiful, and just like the play with the folds are just...
They mirror the movement of the Baroque architecture.
Yeah, that's right. It's like they're following, they're giving you a sense that these are the pillars of the church, right? These characters, they are like, as you watch these steeples just go up into heaven, like these characters are the same, and I think that that's definitely what they were doing. Even if they weren't aware of it, that's what intuitively was kind of drawing their imagery in that direction.
Okay.
I'm
with Gothic sculpture, it's very easy to just see that as fitting into the Gothic style, which is generally characterized by a vertical emphasis. It's a little harder to see that in Byzantine icons because Byzantine style in general is not. It's kind of squarish and rounded. It's not like that. So I agree. It comes across as a bit more mannerist in the Byzantine art than it does in the Gothic. But again, the test is it successful? It's like if you look at that stretched out icon, and you think, oh, that figure looks spiritual and noble, a success. If you look at that figure, if you look at that icon and you think that guy kind of looks like, one of those aliens from the Alien Abduction movie. It's like he's all stretched out and skinny. He doesn't look human. It's like, that's a little creepy. That's a failure.
Yeah.
That's the test of whether this works.
Who's the guy with the mustache?
Dali.
Dali.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes like, that a Dali icon?
That's the Dali icon.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are times and there are places where icons were very different, like that were stocky and didn't have that kind of stretched out. It's not like there's only one type of stylization that ended up. So you see more short kind of.
Yeah, there was a lot of experimentation in medieval Byzantine art. Yeah, I mean the sort of, you know, the common idea that, you know, a lot of converts have, that this art is like unchanged for thousands of years, is not true. When you actually tour Eastern Europe and go to a lot of ancient Orthodox churches, you see an amazing diversity of subject matter and style.
Yeah.
But it's all good. That's the really interesting thing. It's like you don't see a dud where it's like, oh, that was a terrible artist who painted this church. Sometimes you see people. Sometimes you see
repainted in
Yeah.
Athos. There are some
Yeah.
repainted places that are horrible.
Yeah,
and
Like
then,
with the
19th century
what's the one with the
overpainting.
lamb, and then they like there's like some woman who redid the lamb and like destroyed her.
That was in
that's
Italy.
that modern,
That's in Italy.
that modern one. Yeah.
But in
Yeah.
Athos, there are places where you walk into the church, and there's some beautiful examples where you go into the church, and all of the iconography is very mediocre. And you're like, oh, this is kind of horrible. And then the restorers are working on it, and like there's a little window where they've removed the repainting,
Yeah.
and they've gotten down to like the 12th century painting, and it's beyond belief. Like it's absolutely beautiful. You know, there was some of that I saw also at Patmos. Like there's one chapel on the side that they're restoring, and they're kind of removing the overpainting, and behind it is just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and it's important to understand this is one of the reasons that Orthodox iconography kind of lost its way and people kind of gave up on it in the 18th and 19th centuries, is because the churches would fill up with soot from all the candles and incense, and everything would get black. So periodically they'd just like repaint over all the black soot to freshen up the iconography, and every time they did that it got worse, until it got to the point where it really wasn't any good at all.
Hello, everyone. Would you please consider supporting me on Patreon? I'm really enjoying making this podcast as a means of having interesting conversations with people in the arts and those who are interested in promoting beauty, especially in the liturgical arts. But I'm also doing this as a means of trying to help support my family. So if you would prayerfully consider supporting me on Patreon, it would mean the world to me. The first 20 people in the United States who sign up at any financial level, be that the $5 level or above, will get a free copy of my CD, Bach's Organ Mass, recorded on the Trost organ in Waltershausen. Thank you for your support.